Tonight, as we gather in prayer, we do so to remember and to touch once again the depth of God's mercy and the power of God's love at work within us. Like the disciples gathered in the upper room, we gather in this place with Jesus and hear him say, "Do you realize what I have done for you?" All too often, we take for granted what God has done for us, and we move through life dissatisfied, frustrated, distracted, worried, or preoccupied by the challenges of life. But tonight, and for the next 3 days, we change our normal pattern of living to enter into the mystery of God's unconditional love through the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus. We take to heart the question Jesus asked, "Do you realize what I have done for you?" And I invite you in these 3 days to let that be your question to ponder. Jesus saying to you, "Do you realize what I have done for you?" In the setting of the Last Supper meal, Jesus gives new meaning to the ancient covenant celebrated by the Jewish people known as Passover. The Passover recalled the covenant sealed in blood that God made with the slaves in Egypt, and the new identity they received in this covenant as God's chosen people. The words blood and covenant were very familiar spiritual words to the Jewish mind. They knew that where there was blood, there was life. The blood sprinkled on their homes in Egypt protected them from death. The blood of the covenant with Moses created a new people and sealed a promise that God would always lead and guide his people to life. Now, Jesus is saying his blood is the source and fount of life. His blood reveals the depth of God's unconditional love. Throughout his earthly existence, Jesus constantly taught his followers that everything we do is to be from the heart. We are to be servants. We are to live our lives with the heart of a servant. Being the Messiah or the follower of the Messiah was not a power trip to see who was strongest and most important. Being Messiah was all about being a servant. And Jesus teaches us this lesson through the washing of the feet of his disciples. Washing feet was a very menial task. The people of that time didn't wear socks and shoes as we do today. The people of that time wore open sandals or nothing at all. So their feet would have been very calloused and dirty, picking up everything that they have walked over out in the roadway. Yet, Jesus, who was Master and Lord, knelt in front of each disciple and washed their feet, looking into their eyes in a way that said, "I love you so much, I am willing to do anything for you." This is important because earlier the disciples had been arguing about who would be seated in places of honor in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus says to the disciples, and he says to us tonight, "As I have done for you, you must also do." We are to be people of service. In a world that feels complicated or sometimes chaotic or overwhelming, Jesus simplifies life by instructing us to be servants, to touch the life of another person with care and concern in the simplest of ways, like washing feet. Do you realize what I have done for you? In doing this, Jesus affirms our identity as children of God. Jesus affirms our identity as his beloved. Jesus says, you don't have to save the world to show your love for me. You don't have to be the greatest in the world to honor me. Just offer a simple act of kindness to the person nearest you. By doing this, you are affirming their identity as a child of God and your commitment to walk with Jesus, to follow his example. When we do so, and as we practice these simple acts of kindness, of dying to self, this will help us be ready for the cross, because it will be given to us. St. John tells us that Jesus loved his own in the world, and he loved them to the end. The meaning of these words will become clearer tomorrow as we take the journey with Jesus to Calvary. Tonight, as you receive the body and blood of Jesus Christ in Holy Communion, be aware of God's loving presence. Christ humbles himself for us, giving himself to us as food and drink so that we might have life. Allow Jesus to take control of your heart so that everything you say, everything you do will be done in his name.